Have you ever wondered what it would be like to witness the truth behind a company's culture, to see firsthand how employees truly behave when they think no one is watching? What if the person observing, the one who uncovers the hidden biases, is the very CEO of the company? What if that CEO is so committed to making sure every employee is treated equally, that they go to extreme lengths to catch those who cross the line? Stick around to find out how one CEO did exactly that, and how their decision to disguise themselves as a janitor led to one of the most eye-opening moments in the company's history. Stay tuned until the end, because you won't believe the shocking twist. The corporate world is a place where polished presentations, professional attire, and fancy offices often mask the real story of what goes on behind closed doors. But what happens when a company leader steps outside the ivory tower to truly understand the dynamics beneath the surface? This is exactly what one CEO, a leader known for their commitment to equality, respect, and transparency, decided to find out. They had heard rumors of toxic behavior, subtle yet harmful microaggressions, the kind that fester in quiet corners of the office. Employees had whispered about these incidents, but no one could quite pin them down. The CEO couldn't sit idly by, hoping the problem would resolve itself. No, they knew they needed to see it for themselves. The CEO would go undercover, not in a boardroom suit and tie, but as someone no one would suspect, someone invisible. And so, the transformation began. The CEO, who had built their reputation on fairness and open communication, dressed in the most mundane of clothes and unremarkable janitor's uniform. No one would recognize them. No one would know who they were. The goal: to observe, to listen, and, most importantly, to get to the heart of the issue without any filters. This wasn't about just hearing complaints, it was about witnessing the truth with their own eyes. In those first moments, the CEO felt a strange sense of liberation. Gone were the suits, the formalities, the expectations. They were just another worker, blending into the background and noticed. But beneath that cloak of invisibility, a keen sense of purpose lingered. This was no simple undercover operation. It was a personal mission to protect the integrity of the company they had built. With each step they took, the CEO realized how differently people treated them now. There were no warm greetings, no respectful nods. Instead, they were almost invisible. That's when it hit. Being just a janitor meant being at the bottom of the social ladder in the office. Yet, this anonymity was exactly what the CEO had hoped for. It allowed them to witness the workplace dynamics in their rawest form. The employees didn't know who they were talking to, and so, they let their guard down. What the CEO soon discovered was a series of quiet, offhand comments, eye rolls, and dismissive gestures. Some of the staff were kind, polite even, but others made it clear they didn't care for someone of their perceived status. It was subtle, but it was there, and the CEO wasn't blind to it. But little did they know, the most shocking part of this experiment was yet to come. So, why should you keep watching? Because what happened next, when the CEO finally uncovered the dark side of office culture, would change everything. What was about to happen would force the company to confront its own biases, and that's when the real story begins. Keep watching to see how a simple disguise revealed the truth. The CEO's first day as a janitor was filled with moments of quiet observation. Armed with a mop and a cart of cleaning supplies, they navigated the office corridors, soaking in every detail of the workplace. At first, it seemed like a regular day, employees busy at their desks, meetings happening in glass-walled conference rooms, and the occasional burst of laughter echoing from the break room. But as the hours went by, the CEO started noticing the subtle, almost imperceptible cracks in the veneer of professionalism. These were the small, telling moments that confirmed their suspicions about the underlying culture of the office. It began with the little things. When the CEO entered a shared space to clean, some employees would barely acknowledge their presence, to focus on their own tasks, to say a simple thank you or even make eye contact. Others seemed mildly annoyed, acting as though the janitor was in their way. But then there were the interactions that went beyond mere indifference. One employee, a middle manager who appeared confident and well-liked, muttered under their breath as the CEO cleaned near their desk. The words weren't meant to be heard clearly, but the tone was unmistakable, dismissive, bordering on disrespectful. The CEO brushed it off at first, unsure if they were reading too much into things. But as the day continued, patterns began to emerge. Certain employees, particularly those of lower rank or from diverse backgrounds, seemed to receive less respect and more scrutiny. A young woman of color working in an adjacent department hesitated when she asked for assistance from a senior colleague. Her voice was quiet, her demeanor cautious, as though she was used to being brushed aside. Sure enough, the senior colleague responded curtly, barely looking up from his screen. It wasn't long before the CEO crossed paths with the person who would come to represent the darkest side of the office culture, an employee named Mark. Mark was in sales, charismatic and confident, and had a reputation as a rising star. But there was an edge to him, a sharpness in his words that could cut deeper than necessary. The CEO first noticed it when Mark walked past the break room and made a sarcastic remark about one of the janitorial staff who had been restocking supplies. It wasn't just the words that stung, it was the laughter that followed, a low chuckle that signaled his lack of remorse. As the disguised CEO quietly cleaned nearby, Mark turned his attention to a new target, a young intern of South Asian descent who was seated at a nearby desk. The intern had made a small mistake on a report, and Mark wasted no time pouncing on it, loudly pointing out the error in front of others. "Maybe you should stick to something simpler," Mark said, his tone dripping with condescension. The intern's face reddened as Mark's comments drew uncomfortable stares from coworkers who didn't intervene. The CEO felt a flash of anger rise but knew they had to stay calm. This was exactly why they were here, to uncover this kind of behavior, to see how far it would go. Observing Mark's behavior confirmed what they had suspected. There was a serious problem in the company, and it wasn't going to solve itself. But this wasn't the time to act, not yet. The CEO needed to see more, to ensure they understood the full scope of the issue before taking action. Little did Mark know, his next words and actions would seal his fate. The disguised CEO made a mental note to follow Mark's behavior closely. The day had already revealed so much about the workplace culture, the unspoken hierarchy, the unchecked biases, but this was only the beginning. The stage was set, and the CEO was determined to dig deeper. The truth was coming to light, and soon, there would be no place for anyone to hide. The second day as a janitor began much like the first, but the CEO approached it with sharper focus. The interactions they had witnessed on the first day still lingered in their mind, and they resolved to get closer to the employees, paying particular attention to Mark and those around him. By mid-morning, the CEO had positioned themselves near a cluster of desks where Mark and his team often worked. Armed with a dustpan and broom, they pretended to tidy up while keeping their ears open. The day's revelations would prove even more troubling than the last. It didn't take long for Mark's behavior to come into focus again. During a casual conversation with a few coworkers, he made a disparaging joke about a fellow employee, a quiet older man from the IT department who rarely interacted with the sales team. "You'd think someone his age would know how to fix things faster," Mark said, rolling his eyes. The others laughed uncomfortably, clearly unsure whether to challenge him or let it slide. The CEO noted how Mark's remarks, though not overtly racist this time, carried an air of superiority and belittlement. But the worst was yet to come. In the afternoon, Mark was part of a meeting with several team members, including the same South Asian intern he had mocked the day before. The CEO stood outside the conference room under the guise of cleaning the glass walls, perfectly positioned to observe the dynamic. During the discussion, the intern hesitated before presenting an idea, only for Mark to cut him off mid-sentence. "No offense, but maybe stick to your lane," he said with a smirk, eliciting awkward chuckles from a few attendees. The intern looked crushed, his confidence visibly shaken. The CEO's jaw tightened, their patience running thin. It wasn't just Mark's behavior that angered them, it was the complicity of the others in the room, who either ignored the comment or brushed it off as humor. How many times had this happened before? How many employees had suffered in silence because no one dared to hold people like Mark accountable? Determined to keep their cover, the CEO continued their janitorial duties but stayed close. By late afternoon, the moment they had been waiting for arrived. Mark was in the break room, chatting casually with a group of colleagues. The CEO walked in, mop in hand, and began wiping down counters nearby. That's when Mark made his fatal mistake. The conversation had turned to diversity initiatives, and Mark, in a mocking tone, remarked, "They're just hiring people now to meet quotas. Doesn't matter if they're qualified." The room fell silent for a moment, the tension palpable. One brave coworker attempted to steer the conversation back to neutral ground, but Mark wasn't done. He leaned back in his chair, smirking as he continued, "I mean, let's be honest. Half these people wouldn't have jobs if it weren't for all this inclusion nonsense." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. The CEO's hands gripped the mop tightly. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Not that they had hoped for such behavior, but now they had irrefutable evidence. Mark's arrogance, his blatant disregard for the dignity of others, and his unrepentant attitude confirmed that this wasn't a case of a simple misunderstanding or isolated slip-ups. It was a systemic issue, embodied by a single person who felt untouchable. As the break room cleared out, Mark glanced at the janitor with the same dismissive look he had given others before. "Hey, you missed a spot," he said with a smirk, pointing to the floor near the counter. The CEO didn't react, simply nodding and continuing to mop. Inside, however, they were already formulating a plan. Tomorrow would be the day the truth came out, and Mark's reign of unchecked prejudice came to an end. The CEO left the office that evening with a mix of emotions: anger at what they had witnessed, determination to make things right, and a sense of responsibility to ensure that their company became a place where everyone was valued. The stage was set for the dramatic reveal, and what followed would send shockwaves through the entire organization. The next morning, the CEO walked into the office once again in their janitor's disguise, but this time, their mind was set on action. They had seen enough. Over the past 2 days, they had observed not just Mark's toxic behavior but also the silent complicity of others who allowed it to persist. It was time to confront the problem head-on. However, the CEO knew that such issues required more than just calling out one person. They needed to make a statement that would resonate across the company. Mark, as usual, was his overconfident self, walking through the office with an air of superiority. By mid-morning, he was back in the break room, once again joking with a few colleagues. The CEO decided this would be the moment to act. Pushing their cleaning cart into the break room, they began wiping down surfaces, all while listening to Mark's latest comments. This time, he was making fun of a delivery person who had just dropped off a package, mocking their accent in a loud and exaggerated manner. The CEO had heard enough. Setting down the cleaning supplies, they straightened their posture and turned to face Mark. "Do you really think it's appropriate to talk about people like that?" they asked, their voice steady but firm. Mark, caught off guard, looked at them with mild irritation. "Excuse me," he said, his tone laced with condescension. "I didn't know janitors were part of the moral police." The room fell silent, and the few people present began to shift uncomfortably. But the CEO didn't flinch. They removed their cap and glasses, revealing their true identity. "I'm not just a janitor," the CEO said, their voice now commanding. "I'm the CEO of this company, and I've been undercover for the past 2 days to see how employees treat one another. And you, Mark, have shown me exactly why this workplace needs a serious change." Mark's face drained of color. The confidence he had displayed so freely moments ago evaporated in an instant. "Wait, what?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is some kind of joke, right?" "It's not a joke," the CEO replied, their gaze unwavering. "I've seen how you talk to people, how you belittle and mock those you think are beneath you. And what's worse is that you think you can get away with it because no one challenges you. Well, that ends today." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The CEO continued, turning their attention to the other employees present. "Let me make something clear. This company does not tolerate racism, disrespect, or any form of discrimination. Our core values are built on respect and inclusion, and anyone who violates those principles has no place here." Mark began to stammer, attempting to defend himself. "I didn't mean anything by it. It was just a joke. Everyone here knows that." The CEO held up a hand to silence him. "There's nothing funny about belittling others, Mark. Words have consequences, and your behavior has created a toxic environment that hurts not just the individuals you target but the entire team. This is not about intent, it's about impact." Turning to the others in the break room, the CEO addressed them directly. "I want all of you to understand that we are better than this. Silence in the face of disrespect is complicity. If you see something wrong, speak up. It's the only way we can create a workplace where everyone feels safe and valued." With that, the CEO made their decision clear. "Mark, I'll be discussing your behavior with HR, and there will be consequences. This is your chance to reflect on your actions and make a change, but let me be clear, this is your only warning. The CEO left the break room, knowing their words had sparked a shift in the office. For the rest of the day, whispers of the confrontation spread like wildfire. Employees were shocked, impressed, and, most importantly, inspired. The CEO's bold actions served as a wake-up call, a reminder that leadership wasn't just about profits or performance, it was about standing up for what was right. By the end of the day, the CEO had arranged a company-wide meeting to address the incident and announce new measures to ensure accountability and inclusivity. As they prepared to step into the spotlight once again, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. Change was coming, and it started now. Later that afternoon, the CEO stood at the front of the company's main conference room. Every employee was in attendance, from interns to senior managers, the air thick with anticipation. The whispers from the break room confrontation had spread, and everyone was curious to hear what the CEO had to say. The moment felt pivotal, a crossroads where the company's culture would either be rebuilt or exposed for its flaws. The CEO began with a question, their voice calm but resolute. How many of you believe this is a workplace where everyone is treated with respect? A few hands went up, hesitant and uncertain. The majority of the room remained still, their silence an answer in itself. Over the past few days, the CEO continued, I've seen this company through a very different lens. I've experienced how some of you treat those you perceive as beneath you. I've witnessed moments of kindness, yes, but I've also seen moments of prejudice, condescension, and outright disrespect. And let me tell you, it was eye-opening. The room was dead silent, every pair of eyes fixed on the CEO. They recounted their experience as a janitor, sharing key moments without naming individuals just yet. They described the indifference, the microaggressions, and the blatant disrespect they had seen. They spoke about how these behaviors, no matter how small they seemed, could create an environment of fear and alienation for many employees. Let me be clear, the CEO said, their tone unwavering. This is not about singling out one person or pointing fingers. This is about all of us taking a hard look at ourselves and asking if we're living up to the values we claim to stand for. If the answer is no, then it's time to change. They paused, letting their words sink in. Then they addressed the elephant in the room. That said, accountability starts at the top. I will not allow anyone, no matter their position or performance, to tarnish the integrity of this workplace. Racism, discrimination, and harassment have no place here, and those who engage in such behavior will face consequences. At this point, the CEO mentioned Mark's name, outlining the specific incidents they had witnessed without shaming him outright. They explained that Mark would be facing disciplinary action and that HR would work with him on a plan for corrective measures. This is not about punishment for its own sake, the CEO said. This is about creating a workplace where everyone feels safe, valued, and respected. Mark has an opportunity to learn and grow, just as we all do. The CEO then turned to the rest of the room. But Mark's behavior is not an isolated problem. It's a symptom of a deeper issue, one that I, as your leader, take responsibility for. It's clear that we need to do better, and we will. With that, the CEO announced a series of new initiatives aimed at fostering a more inclusive workplace. These included mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all employees, a clear and confidential reporting system for workplace concerns, and a commitment to regularly reviewing company policies to ensure they align with their stated values. They also introduced a diversity council made up of employees from all levels of the organization to advise leadership on these issues moving forward. The room began to shift as the CEO spoke. Faces that had initially shown discomfort now displayed a mix of relief and hope. Employees could see that this wasn't just a PR stunt or a hollow promise, it was a genuine commitment to change. As the meeting drew to a close, the CEO ended with a powerful statement. This is just the beginning. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with each of us making a choice. A choice to be better, to speak up when we see something wrong, and to hold ourselves and each other accountable. Together, we can create a workplace we're all proud of. And I promise you, I will lead the way. The room erupted in applause, a mix of catharsis and inspiration filling the air. Employees left the meeting with a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that they each had a role to play in shaping the future of their workplace. And as the CEO watched them go, they knew that the decision to go undercover had been worth every second. They hadn't just caught one person red-handed, they had sparked a movement for real, lasting change. In the days following the meeting, the impact of the CEO's actions reverberated throughout the company. The mood in the office shifted noticeably. Conversations were different, more thoughtful. more introspective. Employees who had previously stayed silent about workplace issues now felt emboldened to share their experiences and ideas. Some even approached the CEO directly to express gratitude for addressing the problem head-on and for creating an opportunity for meaningful dialogue. Mark, meanwhile, faced the consequences of his actions. The HR department, in collaboration with the CEO, outlined a structured corrective plan. Mark was required to attend mandatory sensitivity and diversity training sessions and participate in one-on-one coaching to address his behavior. The CEO made it clear that this was Mark's chance to change, but also emphasized that continued misconduct would result in immediate termination. While Mark initially reacted defensively, the gravity of the situation eventually sank in. He began the process reluctantly, but as time went on, the discomfort of introspection turned into an opportunity for growth. Conversations with colleagues he had previously dismissed provided him with perspectives he had never considered. It was a long road, but the company's emphasis on restorative justice over pure punishment began to make a difference. The Diversity Council, newly formed in the aftermath of the incident, quickly got to work. Comprising employees from all levels and backgrounds, the council became a hub for open discussions and actionable recommendations. They proposed new initiatives, such as monthly workshops on topics like unconscious bias and allyship, and informal listening sessions where employees could voice concerns without fear of retaliation. The council's first major initiative was a survey designed to capture a clear picture of the company's cultural landscape. Employees were encouraged to anonymously share their experiences, both positive and negative, and to suggest changes they wanted to see. The results of the survey were eye-opening. It confirmed what the CEO had already suspected. While many employees loved their jobs and appreciated the company's mission, there were undercurrents of inequity and a lack of accountability that needed to be addressed. The CEO took the survey results seriously and shared a comprehensive plan to address the findings. Quarterly updates on the progress of the initiatives were promised, ensuring transparency and keeping leadership accountable. This approach not only restored employees' trust but also fostered a sense of shared responsibility for the company's culture. Over time, the effects of the CEO's undercover operation became more evident. Team meetings became more inclusive, with managers consciously creating space for quieter employees to contribute. Recognition programs were revamped to celebrate not just performance but also acts of kindness and collaboration. Even the small, everyday interactions, the good mornings and thank yous that had once been overlooked became more frequent, creating an atmosphere of mutual respect. The story of the CEO's undercover stint spread beyond the company walls, gaining attention in the business world and media. It became a case study in corporate ethics, sparking discussions about leadership responsibility and the importance of cultivating an inclusive workplace. Other companies reached out to the CEO, seeking advice on how to address similar issues within their own organizations. For the CEO, the experience was transformative. What had begun as a covert investigation into workplace culture ended up reaffirming their belief in the power of accountability and leadership by example. By stepping out of their role and into the shoes of the most overlooked employee, they had seen their company in its truest light, flaws and all. And they had come to understand that change didn't just start at the top. It had to be nurtured at every level. Months later, the CEO reflected on the journey during a company town hall. "What we've accomplished together is proof that no challenge is insurmountable when we're willing to confront it with honesty and compassion," they said. "We're not perfect, and we never will be, but every step we take toward fairness and respect brings us closer to the company we aspire to be." The employees erupted in applause, a standing ovation that marked not just the end of a chapter, but the beginning of a new era. It was a testament to the fact that a workplace isn't just defined by its policies or its profits, but by the people who show up every day willing to learn, to grow, and to do better. As the months turned into a year, the transformation at the company became even more pronounced. The initiative sparked by the CEO's undercover operation had taken root, and employees began to notice tangible differences in the workplace. The culture of silence that had once allowed discrimination and disrespect to thrive was replaced by a culture of openness and accountability. Employees not only felt safer speaking up, but they also felt a renewed sense of pride in being part of a company that genuinely cared about its people. Mark, who had been at the center of the original controversy, underwent a remarkable change. Though his initial reactions to the corrective plan were defensive, the process of introspection and education slowly reshaped his perspective. He participated in diversity workshops and spent time listening to the experiences of his colleagues, many of whom he had never taken the time to know. Over time, he became an advocate for inclusion, using his own story as an example of how people can grow when given the opportunity and the tools to change. The Diversity Council continued to thrive, becoming a cornerstone of the company's culture. It expanded its role to include mentoring programs, cross-departmental collaboration initiatives, and even external community outreach. The council's efforts not only improved the workplace but also strengthened the company's reputation in the industry as a leader in inclusivity and innovation. Job applications soared as word spread that this was a place where employees were valued not just for their skills but for who they were. The CEO, too, had grown through the process. They began incorporating regular shadowing sessions into their routine, not as a janitor this time, but by spending a day in the shoes of various roles across the organization. From call center agents to product developers, the CEO made it a point to understand the challenges and contributions of every part of the company. This hands-on approach inspired other leaders within the company to do the same, fostering a culture where empathy and understanding became integral to leadership. The company's annual review that year painted a picture of success not just in financial terms, but in employee satisfaction and retention rates, which were higher than ever. Teams were collaborating more effectively, innovation was thriving, and the trust between leadership and employees had never been stronger. The CEO attributed this success to one simple principle: putting people first. At a special event celebrating the company's anniversary, the CEO addressed the entire organization. "What we've achieved together this year is nothing short of extraordinary," they said. "But this is not the end. It's a reminder that creating a respectful and inclusive workplace isn't a one-time effort, it's a commitment we renew every single day. And I'm proud to say that we're all in this together." The employees shared, their sense of unity palpable. The CEO then unveiled a new initiative, a scholarship fund for underrepresented communities to access education and training in fields related to the company's industry. "This is our way of giving back," the CEO explained, "of ensuring that the opportunities we've built here can extend beyond these walls." As the celebration continued, the CEO reflected on the journey that had brought them here. They thought back to those days disguised as a janitor, to the moments of discomfort, anger, and revelation. Those days had been a turning point, not just for the company, but for the CEO personally. They had learned that true leadership isn't about being the most powerful person in the room, it's about being the most accountable, the most willing to listen, and the most determined to make things better. In the years that followed, the company became a model for workplace inclusivity and ethical leadership, a beacon for others to follow. And while the CEO's undercover story would be told and retold as a legend in the business world, its real legacy was the lasting change it inspired, proof that even the smallest actions, when guided by courage and empathy, can lead to extraordinary transformation. Years later, the story of the CEO's undercover experience remained a defining chapter in the company's history and a powerful example in the business world. The narrative was frequently discussed at leadership conferences, cited in business school case studies, and even adapted into motivational talks. But for the CEO, the true measure of success wasn't in the accolades or the recognition, it was in the thriving workplace culture they had helped create. The company had grown significantly, expanding into new markets and industries. Yet, despite its rapid growth, the core values that had been reinforced during that pivotal year remained firmly intact. Employees continued to feel valued, respected, and empowered to contribute their best. The Diversity Council had evolved into an integral part of the company's strategic operations, ensuring that inclusivity was embedded in every decision from hiring practices to product design. Mark, who had been at the center of the CEO's undercover revelation, had become an inspiring story of redemption. He had not only embraced the lessons of his corrective process, but had emerged as a champion for workplace inclusivity. Mark volunteered to lead employee workshops, sharing his experiences openly and using his story to encourage others to reflect on their own biases. "I'm living proof that change is possible," he often said, a statement that resonated deeply with colleagues and new hires alike. The company's leadership team had also undergone a transformation. Inspired by the CEO's willingness to immerse themselves in the employee experience, other executives adopted similar practices. Regular shadowing programs, open forums, and day-in-the-life initiatives became standard, fostering a culture of empathy and understanding. Leaders no longer relied solely on metrics and reports. They actively engaged with employees at all levels, building trust and making more informed decisions. Externally, the company became a force for good. Partnerships with nonprofits, investments in underserved communities, and initiatives to diversify the industry workforce became hallmarks of its corporate identity. The scholarship fund that had been announced during the company's anniversary celebration flourished, helping hundreds of students from underrepresented backgrounds pursue careers in technology, business, and other fields. For the CEO, the story of going undercover was a personal reminder of the power of humility in leadership. They often reflected on the lessons learned during those 2 days, the importance of listening, the courage to confront uncomfortable truths, and the necessity of leading by example. These principles continued to guide their decisions, ensuring that the company stayed true to its mission. In their final year as CEO before stepping into a mentorship role, they delivered a farewell speech to the organization that had grown into a global powerhouse. Standing before a crowd of thousands, both in person and virtual, they shared a simple but profound message. Leadership isn't about titles or authority, it's about service. It's about seeing the humanity in every person, treating them with dignity, and creating an environment where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. What we built here wasn't just a company, it was a community. And that community became strong because we chose to care, to listen, and to act when it mattered most. The audience erupted into applause, a testament to the respect and admiration they had for their leader. As the CEO stepped down from the stage, they felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The legacy they left behind wasn't just in the company's success, but in the lives they had touched and the change they had inspired. The story of the undercover CEO, once a dramatic moment of confrontation, had transformed into a symbol of hope and possibility, a reminder that the smallest actions, when driven by empathy and courage, can lead to profound and lasting change. As the years passed, the CEO's undercover story continued to inspire not only the company but also the broader business world. Books were written, documentaries produced, and even fictional adaptations based loosely on the events made their way into popular media. Yet, the CEO remained humble about the legacy of those 2 pivotal days, emphasizing that the real heroes were the employees who embraced the call for change. The company's leadership evolution became a blueprint for others, proving that transparency and inclusivity could coexist with profitability and innovation. Many of the programs launched during the initial transformation years became permanent fixtures, such as the Diversity Council, ongoing sensitivity training, and community outreach programs. These initiatives were no longer seen as extras but as integral components of the company's DNA. The scholarship fund continued to grow, enabling thousands of young people from marginalized communities to access education and career opportunities. Many recipients eventually joined the company, bringing fresh perspectives and innovative ideas that further enriched the organization's culture. At company events, these young professionals often shared their journeys, crediting the CEO's vision for giving them a chance to succeed. Internally, the undercover story became a shared tale of pride, retold to new employees during onboarding sessions and celebrated during anniversary events. It wasn't just a tale of a single confrontation but a broader narrative about resilience, accountability, and the power of collective effort. Employees felt connected to a purpose larger than themselves, and this sense of belonging fueled both individual and company-wide growth. The CEO, having transitioned into a mentorship and advisory role, spent their days coaching other leaders, both within and outside the organization. They frequently spoke at conferences, advocating for empathy-driven leadership and encouraging others to challenge the status quo. Leadership is not about having all the answers, they often said. It's about asking the right questions, especially when the answers make you uncomfortable. In one of their final public appearances before fully retiring, the CEO delivered a keynote address at a global business summit. They recounted their undercover experience, emphasizing not the drama of the reveal but the lessons it had taught them about humility and the human spirit. They ended their speech with a powerful thought. "The greatest success of my career wasn't building a thriving company, it was helping to build a better place for people to thrive. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that the heart of any organization is its people. Invest in them, listen to them, and empower them, and they'll build something extraordinary." The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for the CEO, it was for the values they had championed and the change they had sparked. It was a celebration of what happens when leaders choose courage over comfort and humanity over hierarchy. In retirement, the CEO quietly continued their advocacy, working with nonprofits and mentoring young leaders. While they avoided the spotlight, their story remained a beacon of hope and a reminder of what true leadership could achieve. Back at the company, a new generation of leaders carried forward the CEO's legacy. They faced their own challenges and made their own decisions, but the foundation of respect, accountability, and inclusion remained steadfast. And whenever someone asked about the framed janitor's uniform displayed in the company's main office, employees smiled and shared the story, a story of a leader who dared to step into someone else's shoes and, in doing so, changed everything. In the decades that followed, the legacy of the CEO's undercover experience transcended the company and became a global movement for ethical leadership. Business schools around the world adopted the story as a core case study, focusing on its lessons in humility, accountability, and the transformative power of empathy. The company, now a leader in its industry, continued to evolve, but its foundation of inclusivity and respect remained unshakable. The framed janitor's uniform had become an iconic symbol of the organization's journey, placed in a museum-like corner of the headquarters. Alongside it were testimonials from employees, a timeline of the company's cultural milestones, and a quote from the CEO, "True leadership begins when you see every person as your equal." Generations of employees walked by the exhibit, many pausing to reflect on its meaning. For new hires, it was a reminder that their voices mattered, no matter their position. For long-standing employees, it was a touchstone of pride, a reminder of how far they had come together. One of those new hires, a young engineer named Amira, felt a surge of inspiration as she read the story for the first time. She had joined the company after hearing about its reputation for valuing diversity and fostering innovation. If a CEO can step into the shoes of a janitor to make things better, she thought, then I can step up to make a difference in my own way. Little did she know, Amira would eventually become one of the company's most impactful leaders, championing sustainability initiatives that would define its future. Outside the company, the CEO's story inspired a wave of similar actions in industries across the globe. Leaders began to recognize the power of understanding their organizations from the ground up. Some went undercover. Others implemented comprehensive employee feedback programs, all with the goal of creating workplaces where fairness and respect thrived. The CEO's bold move had become a catalyst for a broader cultural shift. The retired CEO, though no longer in the public eye, occasionally received heartfelt letters from people who had been touched by their story. Some were employees whose lives had been changed. Others were strangers who had found the courage to address issues in their own workplaces. Each letter reaffirmed the CEO's belief in the ripple effect of small, intentional actions. Years later, on the 50th anniversary of the CEO's undercover operation, the company held a grand celebration. Employees, past and present, gathered to honor the moment that had reshaped their workplace. The event was live-streamed globally, attended by alumni, business leaders, and even scholarship recipients who had gone on to achieve incredible success. During the event, Amira, now the company's CEO, addressed the audience. She spoke of the profound impact the undercover story had on her own leadership journey and how its principles continued to guide her decisions. What started as a simple act of listening, she said, has grown into a legacy of transformation. It reminds us that real change is possible when we put people first. She paused, then added, to the leader who started it all, your courage didn't just change this company, it changed lives. And for that, we will always be grateful. The screen behind her lit up with a video message from the retired CEO, now in their 80s. They smiled warmly, their voice steady with wisdom and gratitude. Thank you for carrying the torch, they said. This isn't just my story, it's ours. And it's a story that will continue as long as we choose to see each other, truly see each other, as human beings first. The audience erupted into applause, a moment of unity and celebration that spanned generations. And as the event concluded, the framed janitor's uniform stood as a silent witness, a symbol of the power of humility, empathy, and the enduring impact of one leader's decision to see the world through a different lens. With the 50th anniversary celebration behind them, the story of the undercover CEO evolved into a timeless fable of modern leadership. Over the years, it began to be taught not only in business schools but also in sociology and ethics classes worldwide. It served as a reminder that workplaces, much like societies, are living systems that thrive on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. The company continued to set benchmarks for employee welfare and corporate responsibility. Under Amir's leadership, it spearheaded groundbreaking initiatives, such as a global mentorship program connecting employees across continents, and a commitment to achieving carbon neutrality. These efforts further solidified its reputation as a company that balanced innovation with integrity. Amir often reflected on the story that had shaped her career. During leadership workshops, she would recount how the framed janitor's uniform inspired her when she was just an intern. It's a reminder that no position is too small to hold wisdom, and no leader too great to learn, she'd say, her words resonating with aspiring leaders. The impact of the CEO's undercover journey also rippled through the broader business community. Other organizations began adopting similar principles, integrating empathy-driven practices into their operations. Books and documentaries continued to explore the nuances of the story, drawing lessons for leaders in fields far beyond the corporate world. The retired CEO, now living a quiet life surrounded by family, occasionally received invitations to speak or write. They turned most of them down, preferring to stay out of the spotlight. But in a rare appearance at a global leadership summit celebrating inclusive business practices, they shared a closing thought that encapsulated their philosophy. Leaders don't build legacies alone. The real heroes are the people who choose to trust you, to work alongside you, and to share in the journey. My only role was to listen, to act, and to create a space where others could thrive. That's the essence of leadership, and it's something we can all practice, no matter where we stand. The speech became a defining moment for the summit, sparking conversations about what it truly means to lead in a complex, interconnected world. As the years turned into decades, the company's story lived on, becoming a case study in resilience, growth, and the transformative power of humility. Employees took pride in their shared history, and the framed janitor's uniform, now preserved in a glass case, became a pilgrimage spot for new hires and visitors. It symbolized not just a pivotal moment but a continuous commitment to values that stood the test of time. The CEO's actions had set something extraordinary into motion, a cycle of empathy, accountability, and change that didn't end with them but grew stronger with each passing generation. Their story became a beacon, proving that even the smallest gestures, when rooted in genuine care, could ignite a movement that changed lives, workplaces, and the world. As time marched on, the story of the undercover CEO became more than a tale of corporate transformation. It became a parable for human connection and the enduring power of courage and accountability. The company's headquarters, once a bustling epicenter of innovation, evolved into a global symbol of leadership excellence. It housed a dedicated gallery chronicling the company's journey, with the janitor's uniform as its centerpiece. Visitors from all over the world came to see the exhibit, including students, entrepreneurs, and even global leaders seeking inspiration. Interactive displays detailed the initial undercover operation, the difficult but necessary changes that followed, and the ripple effects those changes had on the wider business community. Employees volunteered as guides, sharing their personal reflections on how the story influenced their own journeys. The gallery became more than a museum, it was a living testament to the company's values. The scholarship fund created in the wake of the CEO's undercover experience expanded exponentially. It became a foundation supporting thousands of students each year, focusing on underserved regions and marginalized communities. Many of its beneficiaries pursued careers that made meaningful contributions to their fields, from technology and education to healthcare and environmental advocacy. They often spoke of how the company's commitment to fairness and opportunity had shaped their paths. Meanwhile, the CEO's story continued to resonate in new and unexpected ways. Artists, writers, and filmmakers found fresh angles to explore the narrative, weaving it into novels, plays, and documentaries. The underlying message of the story that empathy and action could bridge divides and create lasting change found its way into movements advocating for equality, justice, and sustainable leadership. As the decades rolled on, the retired CEO became an enduring symbol of humility and wisdom. Though they lived quietly, their story remained alive through the many lives it had touched. Occasionally, they were asked how they felt about the legacy of their decision to go undercover. In one particularly heartfelt interview, they reflected, "I never set out to leave a legacy. I simply wanted to understand the truth, to see things as they really were, and to make things right. The legacy isn't mine, it belongs to the people who embraced the call for change, who chose growth over comfort, and who continue to carry those lessons forward. That's what I'm most proud of." The company's centennial celebration marked another milestone in its extraordinary journey. By then, it had expanded its operations globally, employing tens of thousands of people across diverse industries. Yet its commitment to fairness, inclusivity, and respect had not wavered. The anniversary event was a grand affair, drawing employees, alumni, and dignitaries from around the world. Amira, now a legendary leader in her own right, delivered the keynote speech. She highlighted the enduring impact of the undercover CEO's actions, emphasizing how their willingness to step into another's shoes had transformed not just a company but a culture. "The uniform in that glass case," she said, gesturing toward the iconic display, "is more than a reminder of where we've been. It's a challenge to all of us to continue the work of building a world where everyone is seen, heard, and valued." In a surprise moment, the retired CEO appeared via video to address the audience. Though their voice was softer with age, their words carried the same clarity and conviction that had inspired so many decades earlier. "The real success of what we started isn't in the past," they said. "It's in what you do with it tomorrow, and the day after that." Leadership isn't about moments, it's about movements. It's about taking the lessons of yesterday and building something better for the future, and that work never ends. The audience erupted into applause, their standing ovation a tribute to the legacy that had touched so many lives. As the celebration concluded, the company prepared to face the challenges of the next century, armed with the values and lessons that had guided it so far. The story of the undercover CEO became timeless, a tale passed from one generation to the next. It stood as proof that even the smallest acts of courage could ignite waves of change, and that true leadership wasn't about power or prestige, but about the unwavering commitment to seeing and uplifting every human being. And so, the legacy lived on not as a relic of the past, but as a beacon for the future. The impact of the undercover CEO's story transcended time, becoming a universal symbol of leadership driven by empathy and moral courage. Decades after the initial undercover operation, the principles it instilled remain deeply embedded in the company and inspired countless organizations around the world. At the heart of the story was a simple truth: leadership is about service and accountability. This truth was passed down through generations of employees, from boardrooms to break rooms, becoming a cornerstone of how the company operated. The framed janitor's uniform, now preserved in a climate-controlled exhibit, was no longer just a symbol for the company, it was a global icon of transformation. Books and films about the story became classics, with new adaptations introducing the tale to younger audiences. Scholars wrote extensively about its lessons, analyzing the nuances of the CEO's actions and the broader implications for leadership and ethics. These works often highlighted the profound ripple effect of the CEO's decision to step into a janitor's shoes. The scholarship fund, now one of the largest of its kind, expanded into new territories and fields of study, fostering a new generation of leaders across the globe. Its recipients often cited the CEO's story as a source of inspiration, carrying forward the legacy of inclusion and opportunity into their own careers. Many went on to become changemakers in their respective fields, spreading the values of empathy and courage far beyond the company's walls. Inside the company, leadership transitioned smoothly from one visionary to the next, each new leader embracing the legacy while charting their own path forward. The organization thrived not only in financial terms but also as a community of individuals committed to mutual respect and shared purpose. New programs were added to support mental health, work-life balance, and continuous learning, ensuring that employees remained at the center of the company's mission. As society evolved, so did the lessons drawn from the story. In a world grappling with increasing complexity and change, the tale of the undercover CEO served as a reminder of the enduring power of simplicity, listening, acting with integrity, and putting people first. The company's annual cultural review regularly highlighted how these principles continue to guide decision-making, ensuring that the lessons of the past inform the challenges of the future. In the retired CEO's final years, they watched with quiet pride as the story continued to inspire. Although they rarely appeared in public, their words lived on through countless speeches, articles, and reflections from those they had touched. The CEO often remarked to close friends and family, "It was never about me, it was about what we could accomplish together." At a Centennial Leadership Forum, a young executive stood on stage and recounted the story of the undercover CEO, emphasizing its relevance in the modern age. "Their actions remind us," the executive said, "that the greatest leaders don't just change organizations, they change people. And when people change, they change the world." As the applause faded, the executive concluded with a pledge that had been passed down through the years: "We will carry this legacy forward, not because it is easy, but because it is right. We owe it to ourselves, to our colleagues, and to the generations yet to come." And so, the story of the undercover CEO lived on not as a tale of the past, but as a guiding light for the future. It was a testament to the idea that true leadership begins with the courage to see the world through someone else's eyes and the determination to make it better for everyone. In every sense, it became more than just a story. It became a movement, a philosophy, and a promise that would never fade. With the passage of time, the story of the undercover CEO grew beyond the confines of corporate lore, transforming into a timeless lesson on humanity and leadership. As generations came and went, the tale remained a point of reference for anyone striving to lead with purpose and integrity. The company, now a global conglomerate, continued to be shaped by the values instilled during the CEO's era. Employees referred to the story during team-building sessions, leadership training, and strategic meetings. It wasn't just a piece of history, it was a moral compass, reminding everyone of the importance of humility, courage, and accountability. In a world increasingly dominated by technology, where artificial intelligence and automation replaced many traditional roles, the story's relevance only grew. It served as a reminder of the irreplaceable value of human connection. The lessons learned from the undercover CEO became guiding principles for how the company balanced innovation with compassion, ensuring that even in a rapidly changing world, people always came first. The retired CEO lived to see their story take on new dimensions. They were honored with Lifetime Achievement Awards, and their name was synonymous with ethical leadership. Universities named lecture halls and programs after them, ensuring that future leaders would learn from their example. Despite the accolades, the CEO remained humble, choosing to live a quiet life with family and friends. One day, in their twilight years, they were asked to contribute to a global leadership anthology. The CEO agreed, penning an essay titled "The View from the Ground." In it, they reflected on the decision to go undercover, writing, "I never imagined that a simple act of stepping into someone else's shoes would resonate so deeply or for so long. The truth is, I needed to learn, to see what I had overlooked, and to understand what I had failed to feel." Leadership isn't about perfection, it's about the willingness to admit when you're wrong and the determination to make things right. If there's one legacy I hope to leave, it's that true leadership begins with empathy and that empathy starts with listening. The essay became a rallying cry for leaders across industries, sparking initiatives that prioritized equity, inclusion, and trust. Companies around the world adopted practices inspired by the undercover story, from shadowing programs to anonymous feedback systems. Leaders began to understand that success wasn't just about profits but about creating environments where everyone could thrive. Back at the company, a new tradition took root. Every year on the anniversary of the CEO's undercover journey, employees would participate in a day of empathy. Executives worked alongside frontline staff, team members shared their stories, and the entire organization came together to celebrate the culture they had built. It was a day not of hierarchy, but of unity, a living embodiment of the lessons learned. The framed janitor's uniform, still on display, now bore an inscription, a reminder that greatness begins with humility. Visitors from around the world continued to marvel at it, often leaving notes of thanks and reflection. For many, it wasn't just an artifact, it was a symbol of hope and a call to action. As the CEO's life neared its end, they were surrounded by family, friends, and colleagues whose lives they had touched. In their final moments, they expressed gratitude for the journey they had taken and the people who had walked it with them. "The work isn't finished," they whispered. "It never is. But I'm at peace knowing we did our part." Their passing was marked by tributes from around the globe. Yet the greatest tribute wasn't in the speeches or the memorials, it was in the countless acts of kindness, courage, and leadership that their story continued to inspire. The legacy of the undercover CEO endured, not as a static moment in time but as a living, breathing testament to what was possible when leaders dared to care. It became a reminder that while the challenges of the world may change, the principles of empathy, humility, and action would always remain the foundation of true leadership. And so, their story lived on, passed down through generations, whispered in boardrooms, shared in classrooms, and carried in the hearts of those who believed in a better, kinder, and more equitable world. Years after the passing of the undercover CEO, their legacy remained a vibrant force, not just within the company, but in countless corners of the world. The story of their leadership continued to evolve, shaping new conversations and inspiring innovative approaches to solving both corporate and societal challenges. The company, now one of the most admired organizations globally, established a Center for Empathetic Leadership in the CEO's honor. This institution became a hub for research, training, and collaboration, bringing together leaders, activists, and academics to explore how empathy and ethical decision-making could address issues like inequality, climate change, and technological disruption. Scholars referred to the center's work as practical compassion, a methodology rooted in the principles the CEO had championed. One of the most impactful projects of the center was a global initiative called Walk in Their Shoes. This program encouraged leaders from all industries to spend time experiencing the lives of their employees, customers, and communities firsthand. The initiative led to groundbreaking policies and innovations, from improving working conditions in supply chains to creating accessible services for underserved populations. It became a worldwide movement, credited with sparking a new era of humane and inclusive leadership. The company's annual Day of Empathy expanded beyond its own walls. Other organizations adopted similar practices, and the event grew into an international observance recognized by the United Nations. On this day each year, people across the globe pause to listen, learn, and act with compassion. Stories of connection and transformation flooded social media, with many citing the undercover CEO's story as their inspiration. The CEO's name became synonymous with ethical leadership, and their story was immortalized in a variety of mediums. A critically acclaimed biographical film introduced their journey to a new generation, blending drama with authenticity to capture the emotional depth of their undercover experience. The film's success brought the story to millions who had never heard it before, igniting fresh discussions about the importance of humility in leadership. In schools and universities, the CEO's story became part of the curriculum, not just in business programs, but in fields like sociology, political science, and even art. Students analyzed the nuances of the CEO's actions, debated the moral complexities of leadership, and drew parallels to contemporary challenges. Many young people wrote essays and created projects inspired by the story, sharing their ideas on how they could lead with empathy in their own lives. The janitor's uniform, once a simple garment, became an artifact of global significance. It toured museums and cultural institutions worldwide, drawing millions of visitors who were moved by its symbolic power. Accompanying it were interactive exhibits that allowed people to step into the shoes of others, using virtual reality and storytelling to foster empathy in a deeply personal way. As the world faced new crises and opportunities, the lessons from the undercover CEO's story remained a guiding light. Leaders in every sector from government to technology cited the story as a reminder of what was possible when they prioritized people over profits, relationships over results, and purpose over prestige. Years later, during a company celebration marking its 150th anniversary, a young employee named Marcus stood on stage to share his journey. A recent recipient of the scholarship fund, he spoke of how the CEO's story had inspired him to pursue his dreams despite significant challenges. "When I think about what they did, putting aside their power to stand shoulder to shoulder with people like me, I realize what leadership truly means. It's not about being above others, it's about lifting them up." The audience erupted into applause, their energy a testament to the enduring power of the CEO's legacy. And as the celebrations drew to a close, the uniform, still encased in its protective glass, stood as a silent witness, a reminder of a choice that changed everything. The undercover CEO's story wasn't just history. It was alive in the actions, decisions, and aspirations of everyone it had touched. It continued to inspire, challenge, and transform, proving that the greatest legacies aren't built in a moment but carried forward in the hearts of those who choose to live by them. And in that sense, the story would never truly end. It would echo through time, lighting the way for generations to come. And if this story has inspired you to think differently about leadership and empathy, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Share this powerful message with others, and together, let's continue to spread compassion and make a difference. Stay inspired and lead with empathy.